At the halfway point of the season, the Raiders are clearly not where they want to be or anticipated where they would be. So what do they have to build on, and how close are they? That plus more on Friday's edition of the Locked On Raiders podcast for November 8th, 2024.
You are Locked On Raiders, your daily Las Vegas Raiders podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
And welcome in, Raider Nation, to another edition of the Locked On Raiders podcast. Thank you so much for making the show your first listen of the day. We do appreciate you, whether you're checking us out on YouTube or you're just catching us wherever you find your favorite podcast. It's always appreciated, whether you give us 3 minutes, 33 minutes, or whatever the case may be. It is all good. Like I said, we definitely appreciate you. If you do check us out on YouTube, we also want to shout out my man Ari. He makes it possible that we're even up on YouTube, so shout him out. He's on Twitter at Ari Produces. I'm on Twitter as well, at your boy Q254. And we got the Locked On Raider podcast voicemail line at 707-654-4693. As we close out the show and close out the week, we'll definitely get to your calls and texts. Plenty of feedback from all the conversation we've had all week long here, even on the bye week. It's all good. Had plenty of feedback from you, Raider Nation. We definitely appreciate that. That'll come up in segment number 3. Segment number 2, what is still needed for this team moving forward? They have some bright young pieces, but what else do they need to get where they want to go? That's coming up in segment number 2. Here in segment number 1, news and notes of the day, and we'll really highlight some of those young players. We'll do that after I tell you about the title sponsor of the show, which is LinkedIn Jobs. They help you find the qualified candidate you want to talk to faster. Post your job for free at linkedin.com/LockedOnNFL. Terms and conditions apply. So as it is a bye week and there was a lot of moving and shaking going on within the organization early in the week, not really so much towards the end of the week. So we start to look at the kind of the team, where they are, what it's looked like so far through 9 games, and knowing that they still have 8 games to, one, prove themselves, and also try to figure out exactly who they are. And again, the evaluation season continues to roll on. And you know, as we had a caller on my radio show on Unnecessary Roughness on Raider Nation Radio 920 say, you know, these players need to go out there and show why they wanted Antonio Pierce to be the head football coach. So that's something that they've got to look in the mirror and call that on their own. But did want to go ahead and talk about some of the young players. And first, I want to start off with some Pro Football Focus grades based off the game versus Cincinnati Bengals, the last game they played before their bye week. And I always say it, I'm not a guy that you know, deep dives into all the analytics. I'm not a PFF guy where I live and breathe and die by PFF, but I do respect it. And I understand what they're talking about. It gives you a little bit of a barometer, right? It kind of just lets you know where some of these players are standing. So looking at some of these grades just based off this game against Cincinnati, I think it kind of matches up with some of the young players that we're seeing on this team that are stepping up and playing a good game. Like Jackson Powers-Johnson, the second-round pick out of Oregon, who's now taking over at center. He had a 90.6 grade by way of PFF. And I'll tell you right now, I don't think Jackson Powers-Johnson leaves that center position. It's one of those situations, now that he's got the center spot, I think that he stays at the center spot. And look, to go back all the way to the offseason when the Raiders re-signed Andre James, and I know that they, you know, have given him a contract extension. When they signed him, it was a surprise to me. Everything I had heard is that they were going to move on from Andre James. But if you go back and look at free agency when it comes to interior offensive linemen, they were getting paid a handful of money, like a lot of money, a lot more money than Tom Telesco and company wanted to pay for an outside free agent to come in as an interior offensive lineman. So they decided to keep Andre James. With the injury to him, I know they always say you can't lose your job by injury, but I just think that it's been such a difference, such night and day from what Andre James was doing at the center spot to what JPJ, Jackson Powers-Johnson, is doing back at a position that he played really well at Oregon that really had everyone's attention. So I'd be surprised if JPJ is not the center moving forward for not only the rest of the season, but just his Raider career. But again, I'm not making those decisions. It's just me going off of my gut feeling. Speaking of offensive line, how about Jordan Meredith? We know that the offensive line has been really kind of up and down all season as far as guys in and out. And on Sunday against Cincinnati, 8 different offensive linemen were used just because of so many injuries. And I'm not saying that Jordan Meredith is a long-term solution on the Raiders offensive line, but he did have an 81.5 PFF grade on Sunday for Cincinnati. And every time he's gone into action in there for Dylan Parham, he's done a really good job. Now, he did leave the game, and Dylan Parham had to go back in because of injury, right? There was like 5 guys on the Raiders that had ankle injuries on Sunday. Something about that stadium there where Cincinnati plays, it's not very friendly to the body. So Jordan Meredith, 81.5. Jack Jones, there was a Jack Jones sighting. He had that pick 6 that really kept the Raiders in the game. 80.9 overall PFF grade. And I would like to see Jack Jones make some more plays, but he hasn't really done that. He had the 1 interception, the 1 pick 6 so far this season. I was hoping that going into this season, he was going to be a guy that I didn't think the teams were going to stop throwing at him. I just thought that he was going to have an opportunity to make some more plays. So, there's still plenty of ball left. I'd like to see him get his hands on a couple more balls and take them the other way. The Raiders need to establish a ball hawking corner. Jacorian Bennett's been fantastic. We'll talk about him in a few minutes as a bright young player, but he hasn't had a career interception yet. So Jack Jones is a guy that does have a knack for the ball. I'd like to see him get the ball, make it more of a routine of him coming up with that ball. But he did have an 80.9 Pro Football Focus grade on Sunday. There, I mentioned Jacorian Bennett. Yeah, he's one of the top 5. 76.2 was his PFF grade, and one of the best corners in the league, not on the team, one of the best corners in the league when it comes to third down breakups. PBUs, he does a fantastic job with that. He's really evolved and coming to his own in year 2. Year 1, 4th round pick out of Maryland, looked a little shaky at times, but a lot of that had to do with injury. Looked like he had lost a little bit of confidence. He said he didn't when we talked to him at a training camp in Costa Mesa, California, but he's been out there balling. And look, this is how he was doing. This is what he looked like back at training camp. So I know I came back with a lot of different reviews about the Raiders defense, and most of them have not come to fruition. That one I was spot on about. So I guess 1 out of 3 or 4 is not too bad, right? No, it's not good. But Jacorian Bennett, what I said that we were seeing in training camp from him, we've continued to see so far all season long. So he's a really good addition on that from that cornerback position. I'd like to see him now, continue to evolve his game and come up with an interception. And then a late addition, K'Lavon Chaisson. Remember the Raiders, Tom Telesco picked him up off waivers. He's a former first-round pick, edge rusher. He's been a guy that's been very noticeable. He had a 75.3 PFF grade, and to know that he's in the action, he's in the game before Tyree Wilson, the former first-round pick of the Silver and Black just a year ago, tells you all you need to know about Tyree Wilson. I'm starting to feel like that's basically a done deal, and I know it's only his 2nd year in the league, and so there's time for him to still continue to grow, but just doesn't feel like he's growing fast enough. He's had moments. He's flashed. Don't get me wrong. It hasn't all been bad, but it hasn't been enough good. There's been good, but not enough good, right? And I always like to live on the who are you consistently basis, right? You don't have to be a 10 all the time. I don't think any of us are 10s all the time. But if you could be a consistent 7.5, I'll take it. Right. And that's what coaches care about. Coaches want to know who you're going to be consistently. And not just coaches. I mean, bosses, right? Coworkers, right? I mean, teammates, right? Hey, who's this guy next to me, lined up next to me? Who's he going to be consistently? Is he going to be the guy that I know is going to be where he's supposed to be and making the play he's supposed to be making 9 times out of 10? Or is he going to be the guy that I have to worry about and maybe overcompensate and do my job a little bit more because he's not there? And it's unfortunate because Tyree has so much raw skill. It just seems like that raw skill hasn't developed in the National Football League the way that you'd like. But those were the top-rated Raiders from the game versus the Bengals on Sunday. Obviously, they lost 42-24, but JPJ, 90.6, Jordan Meredith, 81.5, Jack Jones, 80.9, Jacorian Bennett, 76.2, and K'Lavon Chaisson, 75.3. So before we get to segment number 2 and talk about what the Raiders still need to take that next step and be the team that they're looking to be, I do want to point out the young pieces that they have that I'm excited about that I feel like that they can build off of. Brock Bowers, first-round pick, number 13 overall. He's been as advertised. Like, I don't have to elaborate on him. All I got to do is say Brock Bowers. He's one of those where you just throw out the name and say, yep, check. All good. JPJ, I mentioned him in his PFF grade. 2nd-round pick, center, right? He's going to be the center moving forward, in my opinion. Yeah, check. He had some injury history, didn't get to training camp at all, didn't participate in training camp, was a little slow to get into the action, was lining up at the left guard position, but he really looks like he's at home now at the center spot, and that should make everyone pretty excited and pretty happy. DJ Glaze, 3rd-round pick, right tackle. Everyone thought that Thayer Munford was going to be the starting right tackle. Thayer Munford thought he was going to be the starting right tackle, and he got injured early on. He got hurt his hand early on in training camp. DJ Glaze stepped right in, and he ain't looked back yet. So it's one of those situations, as I mentioned with JPJ taking over the center spot. If you aren't there, if you're not available, someone else is going to be there. And DJ Glaze has been that guy. Has it been perfect? No. But he's continuing to grow. He's continuing to grind. That's a nice foundation right there on that Raiders offensive line. Do they still need to figure out where Dylan Parham's going to stay and try to keep him there because he's been rotating and shuffling so much? Absolutely. But they do look like they found them some nice pieces in DJ Glaze and Jackson Powers-Johnson. I mentioned Jacorian Bennett, 4th-round pick from a year ago, playing really well as a cornerback, a guy that is one of the best corners in the league when it comes to PBUs on third down, and just one of the better corners in the league right now. All he has to do to add to his game is get his hands on some balls and take it the other way. And if he can start to do that, then all of a sudden they'll be doing, like I like to say, cooking with grease. How about Trey Tucker? You want to talk about a year ago, 3rd-round pick? He's got the speed. He hasn't really been used as much as I'd have liked him to be used this year, but he's got the speed. He can be utilized. You got to get him some good quarterback play and obviously some good offensive play calling, but he's definitely a piece that you could build around. Like, I think that you should feel pretty comfortable in who he is. So those are some pieces that I feel really good about that are really young pieces, guys that are in contract years that I feel good about that Tom Telesco is going to have to make a decision on. Nate Hobbs from the slot position. He hasn't got his hands on as many balls as I would like him to this year, but I thought he's played pretty good. Matter of fact, he's been playing really good, and he's been healthy all year. So Nate Hobbs, I would like to see the Raiders retain him. Again, Tom Telesco is going to have to make a decision on these guys. Trayvon Merrick in the back end, contract year. I mentioned earlier in the year that I wanted to see a little bit more from him. He's missed a couple tackles here and there, taken a couple bad angles here and there, but as I go back to talking about consistently, Trayvon Merrick's consistently been a really good player all season long. Came up with a couple interceptions off a tip ball so far. Almost got back to the end zone against Kansas City. That would have been huge if he had of. He's been playing really well around the line of scrimmage. Antonio Pierce has been praising the work he's done, getting to the quarterback, stopping the rusher, playing up there close by the line of scrimmage. I remember when Trayvon first started in the NFL. I remember how deep center he used to play. Who was that? Paul Gunther was the defensive coordinator then. I mean, that dude seemed like he was playing in the end zone. Right, he was playing so far back, but that was by design. It wasn't Trayvon saying that's where he needed to be, but he was playing so deep, so he didn't get beat deep. It just seemed like Paul Gunther was lining him up too far back. Patrick Graham got his hands on him, has worked with them, and I just think that Trayvon Merrick continues to evolve. So Tom Telesco will have to make a decision on him, and then Malcolm Kuntz. I think this will probably be the biggest decision that Tom Telesco has to make. Didn't play at all due to the torn ACL that he had this year. He was in line to get paid a lot of money based off what he did at the end of last year, coming up with 8 sacks in 9 games and 3 forced fumbles. And he even knew in training camp, he talked about it. He was asked, hey, have you ever thought about the contract that you're going to be getting? He's like, nah, I haven't done that at all. And that was good because it didn't come to fruition after he got that ACL surgery. So that could be a situation where maybe Tom Telesco brings him back on a 1-year deal. I think he has a lot of upside to him. I think we saw that on display in a small sample size as far as games last year. He might be able to bring him back on a 1-year deal. If he wants to get the big bag, he might have to prove it coming back off that ACL. And the good thing about it is at least he missed the whole year. So if he's going to come back and be fully rehabbed, at least he's had the whole year to rehab as opposed to tearing his ACL in like week 8 or 9 and then have to, get the surgery and then try to rehab and be ready for the start of the season. He should be good to go for the rest of this or for the start of the season next year. And then there's 2 other guys that I'm looking at that I feel like that the Raiders could build around. Jack Jones, I mentioned him. I'd like to see him be a little bit more consistent. Get his hands on some balls, turn into that ball hawking corner that a lot of us talked about. I thought he was going to be Eric Allen, the great EA. He was very excited about Jack Jones going into this year because he knows how well he studies film and what he can do when he gets his hands on the ball and how he anticipates so well. He just hasn't had a ton of opportunities. He's had enough to make plays, but he hasn't made enough impact plays. I'd like to see some more consistency from him. I think these next 8 games are going to mean a lot for him. He needs to go out there and show what he can do. And then, of course, Michael Mayer And, a second year guy, I'd like to see him. He's been out because of personal issues, and we don't know what those issues are. Vinny Bonsignore mentioned that he feels like he's going to be back sooner rather than later. Antonio Pierce mentioned that he felt like he was going to be back in the building soon. I hope he comes back. I hope he's in a good state of mind and in a good position to go back out there and play, because I do believe when him and Brock Bowers as a 1-2 punch, that tight end position could be really nasty, and you can see that 12 personnel that we never really got to see this year. So those are some of the young guys that I wanted to highlight real quick, because, again, I don't want you to think, and I don't want to make it seem like the Raiders don't have a lot of talent, because those dudes right there, all the guys I just mentioned, most of them are very young and have an opportunity to really do some heavy lifting for the Raiders for some years to come. Obviously, the guys I mentioned in the contract year, Tom Telesco is going to have to go through those with a fine-tooth comb and decide who he wants to bring back and who he doesn't. But those are the three I'd definitely be in favor of them coming back: Nate Hobbs, Trayvon Merrick, and also Malcolm Kuntz. So with that being said, what do the Raiders still need to be that team that they want to be and be consistent players, guys that are competing for the playoffs, even competing for division titles? What do they need? That's next on today's edition of the Locked On Raiders podcast. Before we get to that, though, I do want to tell you about a couple great sponsors here on the Locked On Raiders podcast, including the Arena Club. And for most of us who like collecting cards, and that used to be something I used to do a long time ago, is collect cards, but I know a lot of us still collect cards. And the idea of spending $2,000 or more on a, say, Patrick Mahomes rookie card, it just isn't in the cards, right? Anyone who likes collecting cards, that's cool, but most folks don't like spending money, major money like that. And thanks to slab packs from arenaclub.com, it's now possible to score gem mints of a Mahomes rookie card or other rookie cards, maybe a Brock Bowers rookie card, for a fraction of their retail price. And every card that you can get and every card that you can imagine, is from the hit list from Arena Club Slab Pack Drop. Arena Club is the only repack that provides real value, a complete view of all possible cards, and clear hit rates for each one. Arena Club Slab Packs are revolutionizing the repack game with transparency. After your pools are revealed, they'll immediately be placed in your showroom for safekeeping, selling, trading, or auction. The Arena Club grading process is accurate, fast, and transparent, with a full grade rationale provided and explanation of how your card was scored. So whether you're buying, selling, trading, or displaying, Arena Club is the card collecting platform you got to check out. Right now, you can get 10% off your first slab pack or card purchase by going to arenaclub.com/LockedOnNFL and use promo code LockedOnNFL. That's arenaclub.com/LockedOnNFL. Code LockedOnNFL for 10% off your first purchase. I also want to tell you about Hims. Guys, listen up. Ever feel like you need a little boost in the bedroom? It's time you stop worrying about your performance and get Hims. You can feel confident knowing you can, get the way you need to be and stay the way you need to be whenever you're in the mood, if you know what I'm saying. Hims is changing men's healthcare by providing you with access to affordable sexual health treatments from the comfort of your couch. It provides access to a range of doctor-trusted ED treatments like chewable hard mints and Viagra and Cialis and their generics for up to 95% cheaper. No insurance is needed, and one low price covers everything from treatments to ongoing care. So what do you need to do? Well, you can start your free online visit today at hims.com/lockedon. That's Hims, HIMS.com/lockedon for your personalized ED treatment options. That's hims.com/lockedon. The products mentioned are chewable, compounded products which are not approved by or verified for safety or effectiveness by the FDA. Prescriptions require an online consultation with the healthcare provider who will determine if appropriate. Restrictions apply. See website for details and important safety information. Subscription required. Price varies based on product and subscription plan. All right, Raider Nation, here we go. Segment number 2 of today's Locked On Raiders podcast. Went over in segment number 1 some of the young talent, some of the guys to get excited about, from JPJ to Jack Jones, Jacorian Bennett, obviously Brock Bowers, right? DJ Glaze, Jacorian Bennett, Trey Tucker, guys like that. They have plenty of talent, and we know this. What do the Raiders need moving forward? So I wrote down 5 different positions that I think that Tom Telesco and company need to focus on, whether that's in the draft or free agency, a combination of the both. And you know what? It might not happen all in one offseason. It might actually take a couple off seasons. But the biggest goal for GM Tom Telesco is you have to get it right? There's been so many times where, and I know I've been guilty of this as well, saying, well, this guy is good enough, or maybe this guy is good enough to do this, good enough to do that. I think he's all right. The Raiders need to get out of that mode of good enough. They need to go and get great. They need to go and find guys that can fill the role and be the players that they need them to be in the vision of the coaches that have put them in place. So first and foremost, as we talked about on Thursday's show, it starts with a franchise quarterback, whether that's Shedeur Sanders, Cam Ward, whoever you may prefer. It doesn't matter who it is. They've got to go identify who is best for their team. And as I mentioned on Thursday, right now they'd be picking number 6 overall in the draft, and I don't know if their guy is going to be there at number 6, but they have to exhaust everything that they can to make sure that they go get that guy. And that's exactly why I said it may take more than one offseason to go and fill all the voids that they have. But they've got to stop messing around with, trying to put Band-Aids and trying to put masking tape on situations and think it's good enough to get them through. It's just not going to do it, and it's been far too long. We talk about it all the time, the 20-plus years of, non-consistent playoff play, like 2 playoff appearances and both one and done are not going to get it done. And unfortunately, it's really just hurting the fan base because Raider Nation gets fired up, gets passionate, gets excited, gets ready to see some Raider football just to be let down, right? I get myself worked up into the mode of, okay, here it goes. This is right. I see the the good play. I see how this team's gonna go and dominate, and then it just comes up short. So they just need to go and have a certain attention to detail when it comes to certain positions. First and foremost, Tom Telesco's number 1 job, maybe number 1, 2, and 3, is go get their franchise quarterback. Whoever fits the mold of what this team's identity needs to be and wants to be. They're going into week 10. By next week, when we start talking about the Miami Dolphins, that's going to be their 10th game of the season. It'll actually be week 11 that they'll be looking at, but it'll be their 10th game coming up against Miami, and they still don't have an identity. That's not going to cut it. They need to have an identity before the season starts next year. There's no doubt. So franchise quarterback first and foremost. After that, you got to have a attention to detail in the trenches. More focus on the offensive line, in my opinion. The defensive line, you're going to get Christian Wilkins back at some stage. He may come back this year, but you're going to get him back. He's under contract. Malcolm Kuntz, if they decide to bring him back, great. They have Tyree Wilson as well on the defensive line. He still needs to develop, and it's a slow process, but he does. And, of course, they've got Mad Max Crosby, John Jenkins, Adam Butler in the middle. I mean, you feel pretty good about the depth when everybody's there and healthy. So they can always add some more depth there. But the offensive line, they've got to make one cohesive unit. I do believe that we're seeing the final, games, maybe year or so of Colton Miller, the left tackle. So the Raiders need to figure out what they're going to do at that position. I think the right tackle spot is good with DJ Glaze. I thought at some point maybe Thayer Munford could slide over to the left tackle position. But I'll tell you right now, I don't trust him to be consistently healthy. He just hasn't been throughout the course of his career. And seeing him on Sunday against Cincinnati and seeing him get bull rushed by Trey Hendrickson and get knocked over, just realized that, that's probably not the guy that you need there. The Raiders need to invest in at least one more tackle, probably another guard as well. And that's probably draft and free agency, right? But they need to make sure that they find a solid offensive line. And if they want to have an emphasis on running the ball, which I know Antonio Pierce does, they need to build some bullies up front. They need to have the bullies up front. They need to get back to the blocking scheme that works for them, but they need to make that decision quick, fast, in a hurry and figure out what they're going to do. Right? They've got to take the bull by the horns like Antonio Pierce was waiting for the quarterbacks to do in training camp, and it never happened. Well, Tom Telesco and company need to take the bull by the horns and decide, okay, this is how we're going to win games. So we need these people in place. They're going to have a ton of money in free agency, over $108 million for free agency money. And they have at least 8 draft picks right now, at least, probably closer to 10 when it's all said and done. So there's plenty of wiggle room. So it really could be done in one offseason. I mean, you see what, a really good quarterback does for teams. Jaden Daniels, he's the truth in Washington. All of a sudden, Washington's leading the NFC East. C.J. Stroud, he's the truth in Houston. All of a sudden, his rookie year, you see Texans, they win their division and win a playoff game. And I'm not saying whoever the Raiders go get as their franchise quarterback is going to have that turnaround right away, because the AFC West is a pretty tough division. With KC, obviously, the Chargers are continuing to get better. Denver's playing some really good defense. Still got questions on offense, right? I mean, you got to feel like this is going to be a really tough division. So the Raiders might not slay the dragon immediately, but they've got to put themselves in position, man. They got to stop messing around, right? I think they need one more playmaking wide receiver. We saw on Thursday Night Football what the Bengals were able to do without T. Higgins. He wants a contract extension. Maybe he's a guy that I mentioned that $108 million in free agency. Maybe that's a guy that you spend some coin on. You have a guy like T. Higgins. You have Jacoby Myers. You have Brock Bowers. You bring back Michael Mayer at the tight end position. Trey Tucker with speed. Also, now you got some weapons. Now you got an arsenal. T. Higgins might be a guy that they want to look at. T. Higgins isn't going to be back with Cincinnati next year. We know that. So that might be a guy that Tom Telesco has circled on the calendar. Like, yeah, you know what? When free agency opens up, I got to go target that guy. You know, we got to target the trenches and target T. Higgins. I would have no problem with that. Depth along defensive line, I mentioned that. If they bring back Kuntz or not, that could be a plus since he's got to probably have to prove himself since he's coming off that torn ACL. I think that would be a feather in the cap for Tom Telesco to be able to get him maybe on a 1 or 2 year deal where it's a little bit cheaper. Maybe a 1 year deal with the option for the second year. I don't know. But, you know, I hate to say you take advantage of that situation, but the truth of the matter is he's had success in a very small sample size. So something that he thought he was going to do this past year, build off what his success that he had last year, never came to fruition. So there's a good chance that Tom Telesco could bring him back, add him to the rest of the bloodthirsty Pirates on that Raiders defensive line, and then he can go out there and try to earn a big free agent contract, whether it's with the Raiders or someone else. But it'd be nice to see Malcolm Kuntz come back. And then if they want to be a dominant run game, they need to have a dominant running back. Right? I don't care if you go and get him in the draft. I'd love to get Ashton Genty from Boise State, but he's going to be a first-round running back. He's not going to be available for the Raiders at all. I would love to see him in the silver and black. I just think that he is a monster. He is that dude, right? He's a guy that's in Heisman Trophy conversations right now at Boise State from the way he's able to run the rock. I'd like to see him, but I don't think that Tom Telesco is going to use a first-round pick on the running back. I could be wrong, but that's just my gut feeling. We'll find out. Right? I mean, we've seen GMs spend first-round picks on running backs before and get burned. And so I can imagine that Tom Telesco probably doesn't want that situation to happen again. So we'll see. But again, it doesn't matter. The first-round pick needs to be the quarterback anyway. It can't be a running back. But that doesn't mean that there's not other great running backs in the draft that's going to be coming up. Or maybe even running backs that are out there available in free agency that they can get to combine with what the Raiders already have with Zamir White and Alexander Madison and Amir Abdullah, or whatever the case may be. Somebody's got to be a dominant running back. They've just got to find someone who could be a dominant running back. They don't have that. The dominant running back is in Green Bay, and I know that he was going to cost a lot of money, but man, what he's doing, even when Jordan Love went down, put the Green Bay Packers in a really good position where they could stay afloat there in the NFC North, and that's what they're doing, right? Because they have Josh Jacobs, who was a really good running back and is doing some really good things up north in Green Bay. So that's what they need, in my opinion. The 5 things that they have to be able to take that next step, whether it takes 1 offseason or 2, franchise quarterback must. That's got to be this offseason. More focus on the offensive line, but draft and free agency, I would say that's also this offseason. And one more playmaking wide receiver. I think you can go get him and T. Higgins from Cincinnati when they decide to part ways. And then, of course, depth along the defensive line, a dominant running back, right, and just other playmaking pieces, of course. But, you want to continue to put talent in the cupboard. The one thing that the Raiders as a team don't have is very good depth. They just don't, because they missed out on so many draft picks. They need to continue to build up depth. So it's not just 1 good draft or 2 good drafts and then you're done. You have to consistently get and hit 2-3 good players each and every year in the draft, and you'll give yourself a chance. That's my thoughts. What are yours? 707-654-4693. Your calls and texts are coming up in segment number 3 of today's Locked On Raiders podcast. Before we get to that, though, I do want to tell you about a couple more great sponsors here on the Locked On Raiders podcast, including the title sponsor, which is LinkedIn Jobs. When you're hiring for your small business, you want to find quality professionals that are right for the role. That's why you have to check out LinkedIn Jobs. LinkedIn Jobs has the tools to help you find the right professionals for your team faster and for free. But LinkedIn isn't just a job board. LinkedIn helps you hire professionals you can't find anywhere else, even those who aren't actively searching for a new job but might be open to the perfect role. In a given month, over 70% of LinkedIn users don't even visit other leading job sites. So if you're not looking on LinkedIn, you're looking in the wrong place. On LinkedIn, 86% of small businesses get a qualified candidate within 24 hours. Hire professionals like a professional on LinkedIn. And LinkedIn knows that small businesses are wearing so many hats and may not have time or resources to hire. That's why they've launched a feature that helps you write job descriptions, making the process even easier and quicker. Right now, post your job for free at linkedin.com/lockedonnfl. That's linkedin.com/lockedonnfl to post your job for free. Terms and conditions apply. I also got to tell you about our great friends at FanDuel, which is America's #1 sports book, and it doesn't matter if it's week 10 or not. We saw a fantastic game on Thursday Night Football between Baltimore and Cincinnati. Baltimore coming away with the 1-point victory, 35-34. Well, right now, new customers at FanDuel can bet $5 and get $150 in bonus bets if you win. The FanDuel Sportsbook app gives you everything you need to place live bets on the NFL, and it's all in one place. So when you get a hunch in the middle of the game, and maybe you're taking that Thursday Night Football game between Baltimore and Cincinnati as an example, right? At one point, Cincinnati was up 21-7. Maybe you got a hunch that, you know what? This lead's not going to last very long. Maybe after Baltimore recovered that fumble, forced that fumble on Cincinnati, you thought, okay, things are about to change. Well, right then, you can hit up FanDuel.com. You can check out the latest stats, view the live play-by-play, and so much more. And it's all on the same page where you place your bets. Visit FanDuel.com to join today. You'll get started with $150 in bonus bets if you win your first $5 bet. That's FanDuel.com. Never waste a hunch. Make every moment more with FanDuel, an official sportsbook partner of the NFL. And here we go, Raider Nation, segment number 3 of today's Locked On Raiders podcast. Your calls and texts straight off that Locked On Raider podcast voicemail line, 707-654-4693. Let's start things off with a call from Brother Dre in the A. He's calling to talk about the power running game and what he thinks the Raiders need to do to bring that back. Here he is, Brother Dre in the A.
Okay, Q. This is Brother Dre from Atlanta. So here's the deal. To fullback or not to fullback, that is the question. When we think about AP, he wants to run the power running scheme. I know we used to have Jakob Johnson. He was our fullback under the previous regime, and I think that basically nothing says power running like a fullback, right? So I don't know if it'd be a complete redesign of what we have right now, but it sure would be nice to possibly get a fullback. Do some 22 personnel. I mean, that would be pretty awesome to kind of see. I don't know if that's even possible. I don't know if that means basically completely redesigning the playbook and all that sort of thing. So, I wanted to put that out there as something to consider, or that maybe the team should consider. So anyway, that's kind of what I was just thinking about as I thought about Antonio Pierce's desire to get that full, that power running game going. Anyway, my thoughts on that. Take care, man. Later. Brother Dre, out.
DRE, thanks so much for the call. Appreciate you. And yeah, man, it'd be nice to see a dominant fullback back there, right? The other day I was talking on my radio show about Zach Crockett. Like, man, wouldn't it be nice to see Zach Crockett in there? I was talking about that Kansas City Chiefs game when Trayvon Merritt got the ball down to the 3-yard line. If that had been back in the day, the Raiders would have brought Zach Crockett in and said, just keep getting the ball till he gets in the end zone. Right? It would be nice to see them have a solid fullback. And I'll say this, I don't think that they're going to bring a fullback in, but with Scott Turner and North Turner in the positions that they are now moving forward as the interim OC and the senior analyst on offense, they have a heavy emphasis on the run game. Like, for their offenses to be successful, they've had to have really good run games. So there might be a situation that you see moving forward where the run game is more dominant because they've made some moves, some changes. Maybe they put someone in that fullback role. Don't know if they're going to go out and make a move for one at this stage of the game in the season, but you never know. I do expect to see a bigger, heavy emphasis on the run game since the Turners now are in place. But thanks so much for that call. Definitely appreciate you. Up next, got a text from Tim in Oregon. It says, hey, Q, it's Tim from Oregon. I got a question, and you may not have the answer, and that's okay. Maybe this is more of a rhetorical question. Why was Scott Turner not named offensive coordinator? Norv Turner's son. That blows my mind, Q. Norv Turner was one of the greatest offensive coordinators of his time. I would think that Scott Turner would have some of the great OC DNA in him. Too bad we had to wait 9 games to see what Scott Turner could do. I don't know if Turner will be better, but I think Scott has learned a tremendous amount from his dad. Guess we'll see in week 11. That's all I have. Thanks for your time, Q. That's Tim in Oregon, and that's a good, valid question. It really is. And it's funny, when Scott Turner was first put onto the Raiders squad on the coaching staff back in 2023, I thought he was going to have a bigger role than just the passing game coordinator or the quarterback coach or whatever. I think he was the passing game coordinator. I thought he was going to have a much bigger role because he had to have that offensive coordinator experience in Washington. And of course, he does come from Norv Turner, who is at one point really a sharp offensive mind. I was always a big fan of Norv Turner, the offensive coordinator, than I was Norv Turner, the head coach. I just think that he was really good at what he did. I don't know why they didn't. I mean, I know that AP wanted Cliff Kingsbury first, right? And he also wanted Jaden Daniels, and neither one of those things came to fruition. And you see what Cliff Kingsbury and Jaden Daniels are doing in D.C. So, I mean, I feel like if you get the right quarterback in play and you get the right offensive coordinator, you can do some really good things. And we're seeing it firsthand in Washington. Jaden Daniels has single-handedly given them so much life by being him, by being that quarterback. Obviously, Scary Terry McLaurin, the wide receiver, is fantastic. The Raiders have Brock Bowers, right, who's just as fantastic. And if they go out, like I mentioned in segment number 2, and go get a T. Higgins in the offseason, all of a sudden you're looking at T. Higgins, Brock Bowers, potentially Michael Mayer, Trey Tucker's speed, Jacoby Myers still under contract. Like, that's a lot to like, but you got to get the right play caller, and you got to get the right QB. Tim, thanks so much for that text. Definitely appreciate you. Up next, got a call from Raider Big C from L.A. Buckle up, Raider Nation. He's calling to talk about the Antonio Pierce conversations that's been going on and tells us what he was reminded of, and he's very fired up, and he's going to let us know about it. Here he is, Raider Big C, coming out of L.A.
Hey, Q, it's Raider Big C from L.A. This whole AP talk is starting to remind me the Derek Carr conversation. I feel like that's where we're back at now. You have half of Raider Nation calling for his head. You have the other half saying, no, he needs to stay. I feel that's what's going on. It's the Derek Carr conversation. So this is what I say to everyone. Let's be patient. His overall record is 7-11. 7-11. That's his record right now. Take the interim. It don't matter. We always say wins are wins. He's 7-11. Yes, did we all expect to have a better season? We did. But what can you do? You got to play the game. Ultimately, you play the game, and that's how you're going to go. If you win, you win. We want to win every day. Don't get me wrong. I want to win. I sit every Sunday on the couch to watch the game. I've been to 2 games already. And what happens? They lose, but I still show up. So just how everyone that didn't like Derek Carr back then, but yet we still showed up to the games. We still watched them, if we can, of course. Be patient. We're 7-11. The draft kind of really ruined us. When they took Michael Penix, I sat there and was like, wow, that's it. We're not going to have a quarterback. They tried, but now we got Brock Bowers. And every time he catches it, I always say, there goes the rookie. That's a hell of a rookie. JPJ, he's way better at center than he was at left guard. Let him play at center. You said it yourself. He's the future. The foundation is there, everyone. Let's be patient. The day will rise again. The sun will rise. We have another day. They will do what they got to do. So if you go to the games, please, always stand up. And like the caller said the other day, win, lose, or tie, Raider Nation till I die. And everyone, just relax. Relax. Why are we going to cut someone again? It don't make sense. It doesn't make sense. I'm tired of always firing, hiring. Let it be. Let AP stay. Let's see what happens. Let's give someone at least 2 years. Because if that's the case, if you're at your job and they only give you 1 month to do your job and you didn't succeed, they're going to fire you? I'll wait. Exactly. So let him stay. Let him do what he got to do. Build a foundation. Let them stay and see what happens. Raider Nation, Big C from LA, out.
Big C, thanks for the call, man. I appreciate you. And I can see those comparisons. It's a lot of back and forth, but the reason why it's a lot of back and forth is because so many people, including yourself, have different opinions, right? So when you call and you're fired up about it, someone's now listening like, oh yeah, Big C. Well, you know what I mean? Like, that's what happens. That's how the conversation goes. So as much as you're fired up right now, someone else is fired up. Someone's picking up the phone right now at 707-654-4693. It's like, well, you know what? Hey, I'm calling to respond to Raider Big C. That's how it happens, right? So again, being fired up is cool. I respect it. I appreciate the passion. Love the passion, right? That's what Raider Nation's all about. But that passion is what has everyone in a disagreement, right? There's some that are in the category of be patient. There's some that is in the category of burn it all down, start over again. I'm not, but that's just how it goes. And again, I respect everyone's opinion. I don't always agree, just like everyone doesn't always agree with my opinion, which is fine. That's what we're here for. It's just that's what it is. It's not that anyone wants to argue. It's just everyone's passionate about this team and where they want it to go. Ultimately, everybody, and I mean everyone. I can answer for everyone on this one. I can't answer for everyone on very many. I can answer for everyone on this one. Everyone wants to see this team succeed and be really good. That's the one thing I do know. But thanks for the call. I do appreciate you, and thanks for the passion, my man, as well. We'll close things out with a text from Cole Region Raider. He says, what's up, Q? Cole Region Raider here. I'm glad to hear you mention Jackson Dart Thursday. He's the quarterback from Ole Miss. He said, this dude is a Raider. If I'm picking for the Raiders, that's who I'm watching. He'll be cheaper than most, has gotten better every year. Ask current partner owner Tom Brady if you need to use a high draft pick on a quarterback. Love your show, man. Raiders for life. That's Cole Region Raider. And yeah, Jackson Dart is a really good quarterback. And, he's being coached up by Lane Kiffin. Ole Miss is a really good team, probably one of the better teams that they have this year. They really have a good defense. I'm interested to see what Ole Miss is going to do. And this is another reason why, I say it all the time. I watch college football to scout for the NFL, but it's another reason why I'm excited about the 12-team playoff. I think that there's going to be stars born, just like we see in March Madness. We see guys born in the tournament, and all of a sudden they end up being high draft picks and they end up becoming franchise players in the NBA. I think we're going to have a chance to see some guys that you may not have, or may not be household names for you right now. But when you're watching the college football playoffs and all of a sudden somebody's showing out, like a Jackson Dart maybe in the playoffs, throwing the ball all around the yard like he's throwing darts, you're like, hey, hold on, man, who's this quarterback? And remember when Ohio State won in 2014, when Zeke Elliott was running wild? Not only did he make a name for himself, but Cardale Jones, remember? He had a great 3-game run, right? He should have gone pro after that. Instead, he went back to Ohio State, and his stock dropped a little bit when he got to the league. He didn't do very good, was out of the league pretty quickly. But, man, if you hottest streaks that you saw from a college football quarterback, really, in general, 3 games, win a national championship, play great ball. A lot of the heavy lifting was done by Zeke Elliott as well. So, that's what I'm looking forward to when it comes to college football and the college football playoffs. We saw the first release of the 12-team playoff format this past Tuesday. And guess what, Raider Nation? We're not going to see Raider football this weekend. We'll see college football this weekend, including Ole Miss. We'll see Ole Miss. We'll see Bama, LSU. We'll see some really good matchups, man. I'm looking forward to it. So you can do your scouting. Do like I do. Do your scouting for the NFL and even the Raiders. You can do that this weekend, as I'll be doing the same thing all weekend long, sitting on the couch with college football. But that's going to do it for today's show. It's going to do it for the week. I'm glad to be back in Studio Q, as you can see, after being away in Bristol, and that was fun. But, man, there's no place like home. There's no place like home. There's no place like home. So we'll be back on Monday, Raider Nation. It will be Veterans Day, but I'll still have a show for you. I'll be off on my local radio show and on ESPN, so a kind of extended weekend for me. We definitely want to shout out to all the veterans. I'll definitely show that love on Monday as well. All the respect for veterans, always all the respect for active military as well. But Monday is Veterans Day. So we shout out to the veterans out there like my guy Vegas Jess and many others. So have a great weekend, Raider Nation. Take care of yourself. Take care of your family. Love on your family. We'll be back on Monday on Veterans Day. Until then, just win, baby.